Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our exciting new live stream on micheleferracin.it. We are thrilled to have you join us today as we delve into the fascinating world of DevOps and Agile methodologies. But before we get started, let's extend a warm welcome to our special guest who is joining us today remotely, the one and only Martin Hinshelwood. Martin is not just your average consultant. He's a true industry heavyweight with a long and illustrious career in DevOps and Agile realm. Martin is not only a consultant, but also a dedicated trainer. He is broadcasting from his state-of-the-art studio where he shares knowledge with clients from around the world. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much.
So this evening, we are talking about hypothesis-driven development and lean product development. Let me tell you that these are new terms to me, quite new. I never heard them before. And so I'm waiting for you to explain to me and to us what do you mean with those topics?
Awesome. I think thank you for that introduction. And I think what's lean product development is not really new. I know it might be new to us, right? But it's been around a very long time. There's been a lot of work done in organizations, particularly in Japan.
Okay.
Toyota, right?
So you're referring to that kind of lean. Okay.
Well, this is I think you can't really talk about lean without talking a little bit about the history of lean. I don't want to spend too much time on it because everybody can go look it up, right? That's the easy part. But the lean movement really came out of Toyota and other Japanese car manufacturers, and kind of spread around the world as a way to minimize the waste in our systems, right?
Yeah.
So whatever we do in our organization, and perhaps just our engineering team, but in our organization, that's our system, right? The way we do things around here is our system, and we may have bits and pieces of that system that are software, right? We might have software, we might have manual stuff, we might have just people talking to each other is part of that system.
Yeah.
And lean, from the lean manufacturing side of the world, is really about aggressively optimizing that system. You want to remove any waste from that system. But when initially lean started to be applied to the software world, there started to be some I'll point out that one of the earliest implementations of lean, you might know the name Canban.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
Canban was originally developed by David Anderson and Daniel Vacanti at Corbis back in the day. You might have Daniel's book hanging around somewhere, I'm sure. Yeah. He has his book, When Will It Be Done? Oh, that's David Anderson's book as well. Okay. Yeah, so Canban
that's
really...
my Bible when talking about and thinking about Kanban methodologies in technology business. That's it, the Bible.
Yeah. And Kanban was that implementation of lean ideas and lean practices into the software and our product development world. And it had to be applied a little bit differently from the way car manufacturers do things, right? A good analogy for us, since we're all DevOps friends here, right?
Yeah.
Is that your DevOps pipeline is your production line.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
That's the from when the developer cuts the line of code all the way through till your product gets into production. That's your pipeline.
Can we think even on the left more when someone thinks about something, a bug, an issue, or is it too early?
So this is where we start getting into that I feel that there's a difference between how we implement lean in the ideation space, i.e., we don't actually have a product yet.
Okay.
Right? So there's product development and then there's product delivery. And in the product delivery space, that's our DevOps pipeline. That's like the car production line, right? That's our production line getting things. And we want to rigorously optimize that. We want to eliminate all waste from that system, right?
Okay.
You want a great example of that is the Azure DevOps team's journey from a traditional waterfall 2-yearly release cycle towards a continuous delivery cycle. And they did. Brian Harry, who worked was the product unit manager for the developer division at the time. He did a little experiment. He called it I think he called it a zero build. I think he called it a zero build or a null build.
Okay.
Right? And he as you can imagine, Microsoft has a lot of hoops that you have to jump through in order to get into production. Right?
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff.
Yeah.
There's legal, compliance, more legal. I'm sure even more legal after that. There's all kinds of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
So what he did was he they're doing the normal release process for the product, and he took his product from all the way through to production ready. Right? It's been shipped to production, and then he went back and looked at that version of the source code that they built, the one that actually made it all the way through the gauntlet of the process.
Yeah, of the gates.
And he made a new build and pushed it through the process. So you know for sure that build is going to be successfully go through the process, right? Because it just did, right? That we built from that code and it went through the process.
From the same Git commit.
Yeah, from the same, exactly. It was TFVC.
Yeah. Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
Didn't change that. And do another build. And it took weeks to get their product from code into production. Weeks of waiting for approvals, weeks of legal analysis, signing, right? Sending it off to somebody else to get some assembly signed, and then it comes back because they won't give you access to the certificates to be able to sign it. So you have to go in their queue and all kinds of things like that. I think even one of the Visual Studio launches, right? Visual Studio is a big product. Yeah. One of the launches was delayed because they needed marketing support from the marketing team, but the marketing team were busy with the Windows release and couldn't help them. So they had to delay the release of their product. Right? So if you think about it from a lean perspective, anytime, what's the cost of delay, right? If you don't have those features in front of your customers, how many customers defected to other products because you took too long? How many customers became annoyed with you and your products because you took too long? How many sales didn't you get because you took too long? Right? Those are all, you actually don't want to be constrained by those things. So when you're looking at that process of delivering your product, you can optimize the heck out of that. But when you start, I think they can now do it in hours. That same process that took weeks, they can now do that in hours. But on the other side of that, we also have this thing called product development. That's where we're building products that don't exist yet, right? So the product doesn't exist, which means we've got to write code if we're building software products. If you're writing a book, you have a blank page and you have to start writing stuff. You don't know how long it's going to take. Yeah. And that's where that traditional lean mindset of, I don't know if you're familiar, the Volkswagen plant in Germany that makes the Tiguan.
Okay.
I saw an awesome documentary about it.
No.
One Tiguan comes off the production line every 59 seconds.
59, less than a minute?
Less than a minute, but it's not they don't build the whole car in a minute. It's coming off the production line.
Oh, okay.
On that cadence, right?
Okay.
So there's a new one ready every 59 seconds. And that's averaged over the year, but it's pretty close to what would really happen, right? So they might have some times when the production line's offline because they need to fix something, or a machine's broken, or a part, or whatever those things are. But that's a fairly optimized process. When we try to do that in the software world, what you normally end up is a feature factory. You end up with a
story point factory.
Yeah, a sweatshop for developers, and you end up with mediocre products, right? Okay. That's ultimately what you end up with. Maybe not initially, right? Everything goes good for a little while, but as soon as people start to focus just on delivery, and you lose the ideation, you lose the ingenuity, you lose that value of having people doing it rather than robots, right? Because we automate our DevOps pipeline. That's awesome. We do that. That's a robot doing it.
Yeah.
In that product development space, we need slack. We need time when we're not really doing anything, because that's thinking time, that's breathing space, that's ideation time.
Where we can improve.
Yeah, so you're not necessarily eliminating all waste, right? Some of, and what would be considered waste in lean product delivery, right? It might not be waste in lean product development. So when they started applying these ideas in the product development space, they had to adjust. They're using the same principles, right? The same math still works. The same ideas and principles still work, but we need to apply them a little bit differently. It's really common in organizations for us to take things that work in other industries and other locations, and we try and adapt them into the way we do things, and we do a really bad job of it. Right? A really bad job of it.
Okay.
My favorite bad job of re-implementing something in a different world was I used to work for a manufacturing organization.
Okay.
And they did Lean Six Sigma, right?
Six Sigma.
Which you might have heard of. Lean Six Sigma. And Lean Six Sigma is great if you're doing manufacturing, right? But when you start applying it to the product development space or the IT space, you need to think about what it is that you're doing and how you're applying it. So here's the example that they had.
Okay.
In Toyota, you need to know where, if you're running a station on the car production line,
on the line, yeah,
you need to know where your tools are. If you don't have that tool and you can't grab it in time, and the car's going past, right, and you need to do the thing before it moves on to the next car, then that's too late. You need to know where your tools are.
Okay.
So one of the common things that they do in, and you see this in people's workshops, right? You have your tools on the wall, and you create, I've got 50 tools, so I'll have 50 spaces on my wall, and each tool has an exact space where it goes.
Yeah.
And then when I need the tool, I can always find it, and then I put it back in that space. That's shadow masking, right?
Shadow masking. Okay.
If like I've got a little 50-in-1 toolkit, and it's got little a plastic box, and it has little spots for all the things. So immediately you open it up, you have a visual indication that there's something missing, right? There's a tool not there, not where it's supposed to be because it's not there, and then you can go find it and put it back. So that's shadow masking. So what this team decided to implement, so they started to do some Lean Six Sigma stuff in the IT department.
I know where my keyboard is.
Well, so you are right. And that's what they did. And they were very proud of their implementation.
Okay.
Was in the support desk area, they put shadow masks on the desk where they were to put their keyboard back at the end of the day, their mouse back at the end of the day, and a little one for their coffee cup, so they could always find their stuff.
Right, because my monitor is running
down the street. I lost my monitor today. my key. I walked away. I walked somewhere with my keyboard and I put it down. Yeah, those are very uncommon things to happen.
Okay.
Right?
Could almost be a joke or something like that.
I thought it was I honestly, my immediate reaction was,
Is it a joke?
Is this a joke? Is that you've spent weeks coming up with this strategy and this is your implementation and this was for the support team. So I asked some questions. I said, can I find stuff on the network faster?
Yeah.
Have you reorganized all the files into a logical construct that's documented so that we all know where they are? What about all the server names? Are they all in a consistent format so that I can find the right server for what it is? And they hadn't done any of those things because those things are hard, right?
Right.
Renaming servers is hard.
Naming conventions and so on.
Naming conventions, reorganizing files is hard, right? If you've got ass loads of files all over the place, it can be really hard to find out even what we've got, an inventory of what we've got and all those kind of things. So they didn't do those things because they were hard. They picked something easy. We'll have our keyboard that's probably, although mine isn't, right? Mine doesn't have a cable, but we have our everybody usually in an office, everybody's keyboard is tethered to the desk and their mouse is tethered to the desk, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going anywhere. You might lose your coffee cup, but that's about it.
That's an issue because I'm more productive with coffee. But
coffee, yeah. So that's an example of lean being implemented, in my opinion, poorly, right? Making poor choice, focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So in the software space, there are certain things that we do look at, and we actually talk about them a lot in the Scrum world. So Scrum isn't really considered a lean process, but it is also founded on lean. Almost all of the Agile frameworks are founded on lean. So for example, if I were to ask Ken Schwaber, one of the co-creators of Scrum, if I were to ask him, how many things should I have in my backlog? How big should my backlog be? He would answer just enough and no more. That would be his answer. That's a lean.
It depends. It depends.
No, he would absolutely would not say it depends. He would say just enough.
Just enough. Just enough.
Right? And that phrase is very specific. It's from lean inventory control.
Yeah.
Right. So if you were going to run a shop and you sold MacBooks and you sold one MacBook a week, should you buy 1,000 MacBooks?
I don't think so. Too much inventory.
No, because you're only going to sell 52 in a year.
Yeah.
And by the time the hardware is a year old, it's now depreciating, right? Because people want the newer versions of it and you're going to lose money. So that's lean inventory. You should only have enough so that you don't lose money. And one of the mistakes that lots of organizations make is not applying lean inventory control to their product backlog. So they end up with thousands of things on their product backlog. I'm sure
I see on many customers, even small businesses with hundreds of items in the backlog. They are not sorted or not high quality items. They are maybe most of the times just titles.
Yep.
Yeah, so we don't lose that idea or that customer request. Just put the title and the work item and forget about it. Okay.
Yeah, they do that all the time.
Then maybe months or even weeks later is just enough time that the quality of that work item is very low because you don't remember what that title or that issue was.
So there's an interesting fallacy in there, and that's that we need to add it to the product backlog so we don't forget it. The reality is, if it's a really good idea, you don't forget it. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about it if it's a really good idea.
Or a serious bug.
Yeah, or it's actually... Have you heard there's an English expression, you can't see the wood for the trees?
No, never heard about it.
Okay, I bet there's an Italian equivalent, right?
Okay.
But what it effectively means, the idiom means that there's so much stuff, needle in the haystack, right? Might be
Okay.
a
Okay.
more ubiquitous one.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff, you can't find that valuable thing that you're looking for because there's
They're
too
really
much.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, really important stuff. So if you have 5,000 things in your product backlog, how do you find the stuff that's valuable? How do you go read all those 5,000 things? Because I guarantee you no product owner has ever read 5,000 things, right?
Okay.
And find the things. No, there's loads of stuff that's valuable in there that you don't do because you don't even know it's there. You don't know what's there. So that's so lean would help in that circumstance, right?
And I've seen that a couple of times. Some PM on product owner will declare bankruptcy and delete everything or remove everything, and we start from scratch again.
So that's often a good technique. I tend to go towards backlog amnesty rather than declaring bankruptcy.
Okay.
It depends how many things are in the backlog. I might still declare bankruptcy after an amnesty if there's still too many things. But a thing you could do with an amnesty is depending on the type of system you've got, you could email everybody who has added something to your backlog, and one email, but attach all of the backlog items. So one person gets the 20 backlog items they've asked for in the last 5 years. And you just say to them, look, we've got too many things in here. We're declaring a backlog amnesty. Which of these is important to you still? And they'll triage that themselves, right? And perhaps send the one or maybe two things back. But in my experience, 90% of those emails bounce
back. Okay.
Because the person's left the company, that turnover over the years, and you can just delete all those things. If they're good ideas, somebody will mention them again, right?
Okay.
That's that lean inventory control. And you need just enough things in your product backlog to service the team.
Just enough.
Just enough, right? Just enough to service the team and no more, because more is waste. Too little is waste, right? Because the team goes to take stuff off the product backlog that they're going to work on and there's nothing there. So you've got a team sitting around doing nothing. Or if there's too many things, we can't find the needle in the haystack, right? We can't find the good stuff. So that's when you go.
Okay, so I did a workshop last week with the customers talking about the first way of DevOps, so the flow, okay?
Yep.
And flow, also improving the flow means removing waste. And we were talking about too much movement. When you move a work item back and forth, it's waste of too much resources, okay? Or even a work item that stands still too much. But we didn't discuss about backlog size. Next time will happen to me. That's a good discussion point. Backlog size. Yeah.
I think that's a good segue into I think of DevOps and Agile as two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah, or maybe a superset. DevOps, it's a superset with inside Agile practices.
So that's why I say it's two sides of the same coin, because all of the folks watching who are Agile folks will say that DevOps is a subset of Agile. That Agile's the superset, and DevOps is the subset. And all of the people watching who are DevOps folks will say that DevOps is the superset and Agile is the superset. It's actually irrelevant. It's the same conversation. Agile comes from a more it feels like it comes from a more business perspective, even though it was a bunch of software developers that came up with it, right? That's even though They were very businessy focused software developers because they were quite
Yeah.
senior and thought leaders, right? And DevOps is that focus on from the perspective of engineering and engineering delivery. So
Yeah.
Agile works, and I'm going to use some terminology very flippantly, right? I use Agile with air quotes. I mean little a Agile, not big A industry.
Okay.
Agile, right? Little a Agile, i.e. the Agile practices, work across the business. DevOps doesn't necessarily work across the business. It has a much more technology focus.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't necessarily go into a team that are creating marketing videos for their customers and talk about DevOps, right? Because when they're going to go search for stuff online and they're going to be like, oh, this is all about software development. We don't build software.
Okay. Right.
I definitely believe that there's a place for DevOps in that story, but most people in business and most people out there will equate it specifically with software engineering. Right?
Yeah, yes, DevOps, it has this technological twist, maybe.
Yeah.
But maybe also depends on the definition, because I don't know if you are familiar with Donovan Brown definition of DevOps. Yeah,
it's my favorite definition of
mine
DevOps.
too. It says, okay, then
the union of people, processes, and tools to bring continuous delivery of value to the customers.
Yeah, so the value is much more business centric than technology.
Yes.
So
yeah, no, and I agree. And that's Donovan taking those ideas in core DevOps, because core DevOps was effectively the rename of ALM, right? Application Lifecycle Management back in the day. I was an ALM consultant.
Yeah.
Back in 2010, and that DevOps focus definitely broadened out, expanded the worldview of what it is that we were doing, and I think that's fantastic. My background is software engineering and DevOps. That's I love that stuff. But I've learned over the years to speak business, so I tend to avoid. I try very hard to avoid software and technical terminology, depending on who it is I'm speaking to. Right. Yeah, mostly. So that's we've talked mostly so far about lean product development.
Lean, yeah,
lean product development. There's a kind of, is it a subset of this? It's definitely a complementary practice, I would call it, but I think it's more than complementary. It's pretty harshly required.
Okay.
And that's something called hypothesis-driven development.
Okay. And is it an industry definition, or is it something that you invented, your own IP?
So it's so I was first introduced to this idea of hypothesis-driven development reading a book by Jeff Goddiff called Lean UX.
Okay.
So this is and Scrum.org has a class, because I'm a trainer with Scrum.org as well. Scrum.org have a class called Professional Scrum with User Experience, which is really about hypothesis-driven engineering practices. Or that's a big part of the story, is hypothesis-driven engineering practices. And in hypothesis-driven engineering practices, what we tend to start with is, I have an idea, let's go build it.
Okay.
Right? That mentality of, if we build it, they will come. However, that's crap. It's not true.
Crap, yeah.
It's crap. Crap.
You can read it everywhere.
You can build some awesome stuff and nobody cares. And the reason nobody cares is you're not building for a need. You're building for a want. And usually it's
you're not bringing value or filling a gap, filling a hole.
I do that all the time. I like to have fun when I'm writing code, right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to have fun when I'm writing code, I want to write the stuff I want to work on, not somebody else wants to work on. But like, for example, I build and manage and maintain a tool, an open source tool called the Azure DevOps Migration Tools.
Yeah.
Which allows you to migrate data around in Azure DevOps. I've been playing around with Winget recently.
Okay.
So I did a whole bunch of work a couple of weeks ago to move the installation of everything. It's a portable thing, but move it into Winget. So now we have it published on Winget.
Oh,
and
let
it's
me search.
automated, completely automated process, same as all the other things I do. But I have to also still deploy it to Chocolatey, which is my traditional one that we've been using for years, because Winget doesn't work on Windows Server.
Oh,
right? It doesn't work on Windows Server, so I still have Chocolatey. But Winget, I guess at some point Winget will work on Windows Server. It's because it's tied to the Windows Store, right? It's got a tie into the Windows Store, and the Windows Store isn't available on Windows Server. I'm sure they'll fix that at some point and figure out how they're going to solve that. It's probably about attack vector, right? And more than anything else. But that work I did for fun. It didn't necessarily add any value to anybody other than me having fun. Maybe some people will get value out of it, but I didn't really care. I was having fun, right? I got to play with a set of tools and deliver some stuff and have fun.
Yeah.
But the reality is we need to be working towards delivering things that are of value to the customer. But value is an assumption until you've actually released your product.
Okay.
Everything you think is valuable, people talk about, you have to figure out the most valuable things at the top of your backlog. And it's like, no, that's an assumption. You're assuming those things are valuable. What evidence are you using to validate that those things are valuable?
Okay.
Right?
And what if the customer told me to do that thing?
I would immediately ask, if a customer asks me to build something, I would ask them, I might try and figure out what the purpose is. I might say, what behavior would you like to be different in people if we build this? Right? That might be the first question. This is starting down the route of hypothesis-driven engineering, right? So I'm going to ask them why. I want to find out why. Because if I find out why, I'm going to ask them this question. How will we know that adding this feature that you've asked for to the product will have the impact that you think it will? How will we know? Right?
Yeah.
And that is your hypothesis. Right? I believe that by adding this feature to the product, we'll get more customers converting from trial into sales, into a monthly subscription, right?
Yeah.
So now, if we build that feature and ship it, we can look at that data and go, no, it didn't.
It didn't.
Right?
Or yes. Or
yes. Or yes, right? It totally supported that idea. We increased it. Or we increased it by a little bit, but we had to spend this amount of money. We had to spend this amount of money to get there, and we only increased it by this much. Maybe there's a mismatch there, right? Maybe we're building the wrong thing.
And what about if we can't think about a way to validate our hypothesis? Do we drop the feature?
Don't build it.
Don't build it. Okay.
If you've not got a measurable outcome that you're trying to achieve, don't build it. Absolutely do not build it. If that's this is we're deciding up front, why is this feature valuable? What are we trying to change? What will that look like? How do we measure it? How are we going to measure that we've been successful? If we can't measure whether we've been successful, then we don't understand what we're doing or why.
Okay, and so this is related to lean because this is preventing waste. So doing something that it's not useful or requested. What's
one of the principles of the Agile Manifesto? Maximize the amount of work not done, right? That's part of that story. But We can also go one step further, right? Because we might do a bunch of measurements and find out that we built a bunch of stuff and nobody cares, right? Because we built this big feature, we got it into production and nobody cares. So the next question you ask yourself is, once you've got your hypothesis, right, is what's the smallest experiment that we can run to validate that hypothesis? Not the biggest, not the whole feature. What's the smallest experiment that we can run?
And the most economic way to validate our hypothesis.
Yes, the most economic way. So, for example, there's a technique called Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
For building products, and it's where you fake the product. So, for example, when Amazon was working on Alexa, I almost triggered her there. When Amazon was working on their voice recognition and resolution technology, they used that technique. They used Wizard of Oz. They would have a speaker with a microphone in a room in somebody's house, right? The test users. And then they would have a bunch of people in call centers that were listening to the audio. And when they said the trigger words, it shipped the first bit of the audio to those people. And then they looked up the information online.
Are you serious?
Typed in the answer, and then the voice of the robot told them the information. And they did that with hundreds of people to say, is this going to be a valuable product to build? Because it's really hard to build that tool, right?
Instead of investment into artificial intelligence and so on,
should we invest in this? This is going to be hundreds. I think Alexa's cost Amazon something like $8 billion.
With the B.
billion dollars to build, and they've actually not seen a return on investment on that. They've not made the money that they were expecting to make out of it. But they did do a bunch of stuff at the start to validate their hypothesis. And yes, we think you might still, even if the data says we don't think this is a good idea, the data informs but does not control your decision, right? Because humans can still do irrational things. We can still make bets as well, right? If you think about that blackjack or what's roulette, right?
Yeah.
If you're playing roulette, you're better betting on a color than a number, right? Because it's you're more likely to win if you bet on a color or a number. But if you bet on a number, you're going to win big.
Big. Or you lose big.
Right? So that's got a lot of randomness in it, which is kind of how the world works. But probably a better analogy is to think about poker, right? In poker, there's a certain amount of information that's on the table that you could see, right? Have you played poker?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But there's still hidden information. You can see what's on the table, but you don't know what's in the deck. You don't know what the order of the deck is, right? You can guess what the probability of the next card coming up based on the cards that you can see on the table and what you think other people have.
Yes.
Right? Based on reading their emotional response to the cards that they're looking at, their tells, right? Oh yeah, they've got a really good hand, and they've got a really good hand. Based on the cards on the table, that probably means that they have these. And then you make a bet based on your understanding of the facts. That's how product managers make decisions as well, right? We have some amount of information, but there's always some hidden stuff, and you have to make a decision on whether you're going to invest in it. And probability-wise, most organizations are okay with a 70% chance of success. That's a good investment. for building new things that don't exist yet.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Hypothesis-driven development, does it require some technologies or practices? For example, blue-green deployment, where I deploy a version to some users and to others, they see different things, and based on telemetry, I can understand if the new feature is worth.
So absolutely.
Okay.
There's technologies out there that enable this. There's things like Launch Darkly,
Yeah.
which is a platform that allows you to do that. I use application insights, right, to collect my telemetry. You can do all sorts of clever things in there. There are other telemetry platforms out there, but I get that one, so that's the one I use. You need to be deliberate, though. That's the difficult part.
Okay.
Is the people who are building the features need to understand what the intent is, what the hypothesis is, so that they can collect the correct telemetry that will allow you to
so we are shifting left questions. How do I validate this? How can I test it? How can I measure? And so on.
We're in this story, we're shifting product management left.
Yeah.
So not every engineer on every team wants or cares to also be a product manager, right? That's absolutely. I know people that are super awesome at code. They don't really want it. They're not really that interested in anything else.
They don't even care.
Yeah, they don't care. They're in it for the code. They love that piece of it. That's what I want to focus on. That's great. We need people like that on our team.
Yeah.
There's people that want to focus on user experience, right? And we need those people on the team. But most of us on the team need a cross set of skills, right?
Okay.
We need, although my background is coding and then into DevOps, I understand marketing, right? I run my own business. I need to understand marketing. I need to understand sales. I need to understand social media platforms. I need to understand search engine optimization. I need to understand how to I like playing in code. I really hate web-based stateless stuff. I like apps, right? But I still need to understand all of that stuff because I have a website. I have WooCommerce, right? There's a whole plethora of tools that I need to understand in order to be able to do business as a sole trader, right? And as a developer on an engineering team, you need to understand a little bit about marketing, right? Because here's one of the hardest things that people find in building products: getting stakeholders to turn up at the sprint review so that you get feedback.
Yeah.
Right? Normally nobody turns up, or the people that do turn up don't give you any feedback. That's marketing and sales, right? That's good. Getting better at marketing and sales will enable you to get more engagement from the people that you want to get engagement with, that you need in order to build a better product. So you'll build a better product, right? If you get that information, you'll build a better product. If you get the telemetry, the right telemetry, you'll build a better product, right? You'll be able to
getting the telemetry right is difficult because you have to ask yourself questions. What do I need to measure? What do we need? And so on. What is relevant for us?
Yeah, and not just what's relevant for us, but what's relevant for this product and this hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to think of an example. I'm probably not going to come up with one off the cuff, but the even small things, like I've been frustrated with small features that either aren't there in a product or it doesn't quite work the way you expect it to work. And those are all things that if you have the right telemetry, you'll be able to see the way people engage. I think you mentioned before, Michael, A/B testing.
Yeah. Yes.
A/B testing is my favorite example of A/B testing. Do you remember the people feature in Windows 10 that you
Yes.
could right click on the start
Yes.
bar?
Yes, I remember.
And add. So when they were building that feature in the Windows 10, because it's continuous delivery in Windows, right, from Windows 10, they were building that feature. They thought, we've got two main ways that we can build this feature that it could work, and we're not sure which one is going to be valuable. Our data is inconclusive, right?
Okay.
We've done our analysis, we've done our user experience, we've tried it on small, like paper prototyping and all those cheap ways, and they couldn't come up with an answer about which one was. It was even dead heat. So what they decided to do was they would build both, and they would ship both to the 900 million machines that are running Windows, and 50% of people would get option A, 50% of people will get option B. And what they learned from that is that nobody cared about that feature at all.
Yeah, I turned it off.
Yeah, nobody cared about that feature. So they effectively they wasted a bunch of time,
millions of dollars.
Yeah, but okay, but on the grand scheme of things, they didn't continue to invest in that feature. In the old product cycle, when they were shipping Windows once every 6 years, they would have invested 6 years of time in that feature. What they probably was just a few months, maybe a semester, right? Which is 6 months in the Microsoft world. Maybe they invested a semester of a team's time in building out that feature, and then they find out, no, it's a bad idea. But at least they didn't spend 6 years on it. And that's where just enough and no more. I want to tie it back to that idea of just enough and no more, that lean product development. You want to build no more of your feature than is required to validate your hypothesis, change the data, and provide evidence that it's worth investing more money in it. If you don't have that evidence and you don't have that gut feel that, no, we really believe that this is going to be successful, even though the data is telling us otherwise, don't build it. Stop building.
Don't build it. Stop.
Don't build it. Don't. It's not worth it. There's other things that will make your product more valuable that you could be working on instead.
No, it's a powerful word. No, we don't do it.
It is. And I think especially product managers really struggle with
saying no.
With saying no. And I have a secret weapon for say, you don't say no to people, especially if they're senior leadership people. Okay. You need to ask the right questions to enable them to realize that the answer is no. You want, instead of you telling them no, and then they escalate it or squash you, how can we prove to them that it's not a good idea or not a good feature? And that's where hypothesis-driven engineering comes in, right? That's why they ask for the feature, right? What are you trying to achieve? Okay, you're trying to achieve this. This is the behavior you expect to change when you add these new features. How are we going to measure that we've been successful with this feature? Okay, do we agree we're going to measure this data? Okay, awesome, we're going to measure this. What's the smallest thing we could possibly build to validate that we can move these numbers, even if it's just a little bit? Well, this little thing, right? Oh, we can do that in a sprint, right? We can do that in a sprint. Let's just do it, and then you're there, right? You've got that data, and
a little piece everywhere, every time a little piece.
I've got a definition of done here.
Oh, nice.
For you, it's my favorite definition of done for any. It's be the shortest definition of done you've ever seen, because it's a business focused definition of done.
Would you like to share the screen?
I'm just pulling up the definition of done so that I can actually share it.
Okay.
Oh, where is it? There it is. It's like my favorite. share it on Mural, which I'm happy to share whatever I've got on Mural with your good folks. Let me share. I'll just share the entire screen. That's always better.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the definition of done for the Azure DevOps team at Microsoft.
Live in production, collecting telemetry, supporting or diminishing the starting hypothesis.
Yep.
Supporting or diminishing the starting hypothesis. Okay. That's new.
So in order to get there, you have to have a starting hypothesis, right? So this is a product level definition of done. If you've read the Scrum Guide in any detail, you'll know that it says in the section regarding definition of done, it does say that the definition of done should be a standard for your organization.
Okay.
If there is no standard, then the team should create an appropriate one, right?
Yeah.
This is the developer division at Microsoft's standard for their definition of done. So if you're a team and you need to meet this organizational standard, right?
Right.
That first statement there, those first three words are quite important, right? Live and in production. You as a team need to think about what are all the things we have to do in order for that to be true, right? So we probably got to test some stuff. We've probably got to deploy some stuff. We've got to check some stuff, right? All of those things have to happen. That's your traditional definition of done, right? But then the bit at the end, supporting or diminishing the starting hypothesis. Oh crap. Now I've got to have a hypothesis. Why are we adding this feature, right? So this forces every team adding every feature to their product to think about why. Not only that.
Yes, this has to be a shared agreement between the team.
So yeah, we have to have agreement about what it is we're trying to achieve with this feature. Yeah. Because with that agreement on what it is we're trying to achieve with this feature, we need to decide on what telemetry we're going to collect. And then collecting telemetry, supporting or diminishing the starting hypothesis, we've got to look at the outcome of that data after the feature's been shipped and decide whether we're supporting or diminishing that hypothesis. That make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So you're not going to do this for every single thing you build, right? There's loads of things that you build in your product that are table stakes. If I'm building a website where people have a profile, I have to have a login. I'm not going to have a hypothesis that should I build a login? No, of course you should build a login. That's a complete no-brainer, right? We need that. But how you do a lot of things within that context, the actual features and capabilities in your product, the net new things that you're adding to your product, that are your differentiator, right? Most people, the login box is not their differentiator for their product, right?
Not so much.
Yeah, not so much. But what are the actual focus, the actual value focus of your product? And that's where this hypothesis-driven thought process is going. How do you enable teams to take more accountability and ownership of the things that they're creating? And how do you enable the business, I'm going to say almost force the business? I'm using too strong words there, but force the business to think about that hypothesis. And if you're saying to the teams, you have to have a hypothesis, what's the first question they're going to ask the business when they get asked to add a feature?
So I'm thinking about my customers or teams that I know. And this requires a high level of maturity and trust and collaboration between development and managers.
Yep.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Which is not there in many organizations.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So whose job is it to build that? It's everybody's job.
Everybody.
It's everybody's job. It's the team members' job. You might have scrum masters or you might not. You might have product owners or you might not. But product management, the business, where the funding comes from, that whole thing is how we get to this story. So this wasn't their definition of done overnight, right?
No, yeah, I know.
They didn't just go, well, day one, this is going to be our definition of done. They have to build up to that. They have to look at where are we right now? Where would we like to go? And if we use empirical processes, not just in building our products, but in designing the systems within our organization, we need to look at where do we want to go? What's our next step? And then once we get there, did that make things better?
Maybe at the start it was living in production and that's it. And then living in production and gathering telemetry. And then the next step with the hypothesis.
You're exactly right. From first sprint, the Azure DevOps team, when they moved from, we go home on Friday and we were doing, that's our last release of our 2-yearly release cycle. And on Monday, we're starting sprinting and we're releasing in 3 weeks. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And if you go back and look at Brian Harry's blog posts from that time, you'll see lots of apology posts because they messed up.
Yeah.
Right? They absolutely did mess up. They broke stuff. They did bad upgrades. They had all kinds of stuff. But instead of backing off and going, oh no, we can't do this, they said, how can we improve? What can we do next so that those things don't happen? How can we get better? And that continuous improvement, that inspection and adaptation is the thing that made Azure DevOps the product it is today, which is a highly stable, highly scalable product that's used all over the world.
It takes a big commitment from the top management and everyone involved.
Yeah, Microsoft have 2 superpowers in that story. If you've seen the story, I've got some videos on my YouTube channel of the story I've told of Microsoft's transition, and they have 2 superpowers that most of us don't have.
Money?
No, it's actually not money.
No, okay.
One of their superpowers is that they're users of their own product. How many teams do you work with where they are consumers of their own product that they make? It's not very common.
No, not very common. Dog fooding.
Exactly. So the Windows team are using Windows. The Visual Studio team are using Visual Studio. The tomorrow's version of Visual Studio was built with today's version of Visual Studio, right? In that
Inception.
Yeah. So if they introduce a problem, they know it affects them, right? So they have that superpower that every single member of the Visual Studio development team is a product manager for their product because they're users of their product, right?
Right.
So most of us don't have that superpower. So if you can get there, that's the best way to go. And that's one of their biggest superpowers. The other one is that they had that leadership. They had a gentleman running the developer division at Microsoft called Brian Harry, who had that vision and had that focus and had I don't know if this translates well, but the clout, the gravitas, the power, within Microsoft to be able to say, we're going this way. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. No, we're not backing. I know we messed up a whole bunch of stuff, but no, we're not backing off. We're going this way. And he was able to and that push was the catalyst for the rest of Microsoft as Satya came on, saw what this team was doing. He already knew that he wanted to move towards agility, but what the Azure DevOps team became the catalyst for the rest of Microsoft to be able to move towards that continuous delivery, apparent utopia, right?
Yeah, even for Windows.
Yeah, this is the thing. Most teams that I work with will immediately say our software is too big and too complicated to be able to deliver continuously to production. And I
So let's
immediately
talk about Windows.
How do you compare with Windows? Do you have 4,500 software engineers building an operating system that are cutting code every day? No? Well, they can do it, so why can't you? Right? That's that pick in the pants. There's a great I don't know how much time we've got left. Probably we're over, but I just keep talking until the hook comes out to pull me off, right?
A couple of minutes.
there's a fantastic article that I recommend everybody should read. If you're building products, you should read this. It's called Detecting Agile BS.
Okay.
Detecting Agile Bullshit is the name of the article. And it is a paper published by the US Department of Defense that was sent out to all of their procurement officers around the world, people purchasing stuff from vendors. That's exactly Detecting Agile BS. To enable them to understand what questions to ask vendors to make sure that they're actually agile and not just making it up. Because most teams are making it up. When they say they're agile, they're usually making it up. So have a look at that. It has a litmus test at the end with 6 questions that should all be true in order for us to say that we're agile. I would say as well, they should be true if we're saying we're DevOps, right? It should both be true.
In my opinion, one ingredient to be agile is to have a proper testing portfolio. Without testing, you can't be agile because you live in fear of change. But that's another question. We can talk about it for 1 hour.
We can definitely talk about that another time. But I think it's even more powerful than that. You have to have an automated testing.
Automated, yeah, of course.
I always ask teams that do manual testing is how do you run all your
pyramid instead of the
how do you run all your tests? We can't. Also, you pick and choose. How do you pick and choose which tests to run? We don't. Guess. Okay, well that's not good. I don't want to bet my product being successful on a flip of the coin of the testers deciding which test to build. Now they're using educated guesses, right? They know a lot about the product
from their expertise.
The reality is it's still largely a guess. And that was something that the Azure DevOps team did as well, is they flipped that pyramid from lots of long-running tests that took weeks to run all of the tests to validate their product.
Very detailed Microsoft doc page with all the charts, reversing the pyramid.
Well, they got it from weeks to 3.5 minutes. It takes 3.5 minutes now to validate the product works. And that's an incredible story as well. Lean.
Okay.
Right? We're back to lean again.
Back to lean again.
What's the most painful thing? If my advice to anybody...
Do it again.
My advice to anybody on any team, find the most painful thing, the thing that takes the longest, that's the most painful thing for your team to do. Do it more often and work on fixing it and making it go away. That should always be your focus.
And with this last suggestion from Martin, it's time to end our stream. And Martin, it has been a pleasure to have you here, and nothing else. It was nice.
It was great. I'd love to come back again.
We talked about Toyota. I was thinking about software and so on, but we talked about poker, Toyota, and very different fields from software engineering. But okay, it's somewhat it's related. Okay.
It's all related. We need lots of skills to be able to build great products. Otherwise, we're just building mediocre ones. We don't want that.
Martin, have a nice day. Have a nice evening, I should say. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye.